All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Sheila Baker, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to today's webinar. We'll be talking about teaching reading today, as you can see. I live in Toronto, Canada, but sometimes I can also be found in Europe, Budapest, Hungary, and it would be great to see where you're located. So please feel free to say hi in the chat and tell us where you are located. Just a little bit about myself. I have been a teacher for about 120 years. Actually, I've been teaching for over 25 years and enjoying it a lot. And that includes teacher training as well. I've taught students from all over the world, all countries, continents, countries like Brazil, Peru, Mexico, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, lots from China, Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, Ukraine, Italy, Switzerland, Hungary, Spain, Somalia. You get the picture. So please tell us where you are joining us from. So we got people from South Africa. Hello, Georgia. Oh, Quebec, Canada. Very nice. England and more from South Africa, Italy. Wow, more from Cape Town, the UK, Poland. Welcome. More from South Africa. Very nice. Argentina. Oh, Kitchener, Ontario, right here in my neck of the woods. Nashville, Tennessee, Nepal. Okay, more from South Africa and Scotland. Welcome. Nice to have you here. So let's take a look at today's agenda. So here's the overview of what we'll be talking about. And the first half an hour I'll be presenting information to you, and the second half an hour will be a Q&A. I'll give you a chance to ask me questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. So we'll talk about approaches to reading, the task feedback cycle, and how to choose appropriate tasks, the difference between skimming and scanning, and the different ways to process information, whether it's step down or start at the bottom and you go up, and extensive reading. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have the Q&A at the end. So let's get going. Oh, we got people from Portugal. Welcome. So approaches to reading. So reading is considered by many Uh, sometimes it's a bit a neglected aspect of teaching, but there is a lot of potential. And of course, it's an essential skill, whether you need it for work, studying, or just even pleasure reading, picking up a newspaper, picking up a book, whether it's a digital version or hard copy. Many of us do that, and we want to enable our students to do the same. It's certainly good for developing vocabulary. There's a lot of things you can learn uh, if you pick up the right book. You can see examples of grammar, the different sentence structures, connectors, how coherence is achieved in an article, for example, how the author connects ideas using not only connectors, but also pronoun references, synonyms, and other ways to connect ideas to achieve coherence. Punctuation, that is actually one of the most common mistakes people make in writing. So it certainly helps with that. It gives you good models. Oh, yeah, this is how I can use a semicolon, or yes, I need a comma there, or that long line, the dash, how to use that. You see examples of that, or the colon. quotation marks, things like that. So that way, your writing and your speaking, your grammar, your vocabulary, they all improve if you have more input from reading. And it's good to provide different genres so students get exposed. Like in a short story, you get to read about, you see dialogue included. So then you'll see the quotation marks, for example. And interesting topics for discussion. That, of course, is important to choose wisely. If you have a group of teenagers, would it be better to choose something about Mother Teresa or Justin Bieber? I think the answer is obvious that Justin Bieber would be more interesting for them. So it's good to do a needs assessment at the beginning of the semester, and that way you find out what the students are interested in. Like I like to ask questions like, "What's your favorite movie?" If you're, or sorry, I ask, "What's your favorite book?" If you don't like to read that much, what's your favorite movie? And then I kind of get a feel for what are they interested in. Is it sci-fi or more novels, fiction or nonfiction, things like that. And the reading can also be a springboard for your lesson that makes it more engaging. You can kick off a topic. If you're talking about health, then you can get something related to that. Or if it's a story about Pablo Picasso's life, perhaps you want to introduce the topic of art. Oh, and we got more people from Manchester, Botswana, and Wales. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. All right, we're just getting started about reading, teaching reading. Okay, so let's take a look at approaches to reading. So it is one of the receptive skills, just like listening, whereas speaking and writing is one of the productive skills. So here students receive information. So the some of the procedures are going to be similar to listening. The only thing with listening, you can't really adjust the speed. Now, the beauty of reading is that people can go at their own pace. So that certainly helps a lot because then people can adjust accordingly and then go at their own pace, which helps a lot. For example, if you hear an announcement, or if you read an announcement, I should say, if you read it, you look for the key words in that, and then you can slow down if you're reading the estimated arrival time. That's if that's what they announce, and that's what you are reading about. If you are reading a newspaper, you just kind of skim through it first to see, oh, would this be interesting to read or not? And if it is, then you could decide to read it more carefully, perhaps. But what are some problems that students can come across when it comes to reading in English? If you could share a comment in the chat, that would be great. Yeah, the definitely vocab. Yeah, yeah. Quite a lot of you picked up on that. It can be unknown vocabulary, the alphabet. Yeah, yeah. The writing system, of course, we would have to teach that if their first language is very different. Absolutely. Or there could be unknown cultural references. If you refer to Halloween coming up, for example, and they don't have that in their country, then you might not know what you're talking about. Dyslexia, yes, definitely. There could be a certain Learning disabilities or difficulties, dyslexia is where you switch up the letters. Like instead of ask, people say ax. And that's how some people read. They unfortunately mix up the letters or they read kind of upside down. Did you know Tom Cruise has dyslexia? And he's done pretty well. So it's still possible to be successful. We just have to provide the students with alternative methods like a bigger font, or you might have to give them more time if you know they have a learning disability. Yeah, the grammar could be pretty complex where it can cause confusion. Comprehension, yeah, they might not really understand what they're reading. Again, they need help getting stuck on specific words so they forget the rest of the sentence they have. Yes, yeah, yeah, that is a common thing too. And you can just let them know that in order to understand something, you don't need to understand every single word. You need to understand a certain percentage. What is that percentage? If you understand 80% or more of the text, you're good. You're good to go, right? So 80 to 90% you need to understand. But if they know, oh, if I can skip a word, it's okay. I can still understand the text. That helps them a lot. Yeah, yeah, that helps. And sometimes the context will tell you what the word is, and then that way they don't get stuck on that one word. Okay. So as you predicted, yes, vocab was one of them. So either you can have a good dictionary on hand or let the students discuss the new words, or you as a teacher can help them with that. Often teachers like to provide the new words in advance, and then that way when the students come across the new words in the reading, they are, oh yeah, we talked about that. Or you might as you mentioned, comprehension or understanding can cause problems, and then they can lose interest in the topic. So we try to prevent that, and make sure they understand the word, but not the meaning. Sometimes, again, the context will help with that. And then lack of motivation. They might just not be motivated to talk about a topic. Again, we want to choose something that they're interested in or make it interesting for them. If you have a story, as I mentioned, Pablo Picasso, you can ask them questions. He was born in Italy. What would you say? True or false? If you said false, that would be correct because he was born in Spain. He lived a short life. True or false? If you said false, you would be correct because he lived up to his 90s. And then that way, when we read it, now it's more interesting because we already processed this information in advance. Yeah. Okay, blends, digraphs, mispronunciation. Yes, that's true. Pronunciation also comes into play because, especially when we read out loud, we want to be able to pronounce the words correctly. So, again, allowing them to listen to books helps a lot. Cultural differences we talked about, and vocabulary. Thank you for your comments. And then the task feedback cycle, it's kind of a roadmap that gives you some guidelines, but it's not set in stone. And then you can grade the task. First, the task is important, and it's also important to give a time limit so that students don't just go on forever. All right, and the process is more important rather than the product. So let's take a look at this in more detail. So grade the task, not the text. The text can be used with different levels if the task is set appropriately. So you can use the same set of reading and ask different type of questions depending on the level. The easier questions for the lower level, the harder, and the where you have to do more digging for the higher level first. Task first, then the test. That means you give the task first before you letting them read the text. That way they know what they're supposed to do. And the time limit is important because, as we mentioned, people read at different speeds. But this way, you give a chance even for the slower readers, just so that they know what the expectations are. And process rather than product, it's about the process of understanding the text, right? We want to make sure that that's achieved, not the final outcome. And let me show you the graphic representation of the task feedback cycle. So you have some kind of lead in at the beginning. Find a way to introduce the topic to get the students interested in it. And then you have a pre-task where you set clear tasks for them. For example, to get the gist of the text. So you can ask them to look through a worksheet, work on vocabulary. You can use prediction. Let's look at the title. What do you think this article will be about? Or, as I mentioned, you can ask 3 true and false questions at the beginning and then ask them to predict if it's true or false. And when we read it, we'll find out the answer to those questions. Just find a way to get them engaged. And then students read the text, right? So now comes the actual reading. And then now when you do tasks, these are going to be more challenging, right? So notice it gets progressively harder. Start with the easier ones and then get harder. So now you can ask the more challenging question to challenge the students, and then get the higher level students challenged as well. And then a follow-up activity is good to do. And then if you find that they're struggling with the challenging questions, you might want to give them a chance to go back to the reading. There's nothing wrong, just like listening. You can listen a second or sometimes even a third time. The same thing with the reading. You can allow them to go back to the text or just read part of the text again, and then that way you can go back. And then you go follow this loop until you are satisfied, and then the class concludes, right? So that's why it's a cycle, because you can go back to previous activities. And then at the end, you tie up loose ends and you review. You perhaps assign homework that is related to that, and you wrap up the class. And here is the simplified version of it. So you start out with something, a general idea, and then you get the more detailed ideas, right? So you go from the easier to the harder, more challenging task, and then the language focus. So the language focus can be either vocabulary, you can focus in on a specific grammar point. Like often, if it's a story, it could be the simple past or the simple present or the present progressive. So a verb tense, for example, or you can focus on connectors. And as we mentioned, pronunciation. For example, the TH sound. We have the voiced TH and the unvoiced TH sound. Like 3, the number 3 has the unvoiced TH sound. Them is the voiced TH sound. And you can ask the students to find all the words with the TH sound and then identify it. Is it voiced or unvoiced? So that's how an example of pronunciation. Okay, and then we'll talk more about the bottom up and top down processing later, but it's important not to jump into the text, right? So important to have something pre-text and then post-text activities after they read the text. Okay. What about prediction when you or pre-teach vocabulary? Would you use that? Is that a real world task? It certainly helps to introduce the text, and then students kind of get an idea for the topic, for the gist of the text, and then they will be more prepared to handle it. Post text, as they have opportunity to work with the follow up activities. And you can also make it into a productive task where they have to produce something using the information from the text. For example, use at least 3 of the new words to write your story of the version of what happens to you when you go through your morning routine, for example, if that's what you're doing. So they're using the vocab, but they're personalizing it. So that's what I mean by productive task. And it's important to choose appropriate tasks to mirror real life. So you want to match the task to the topic, and it would be something that students would be able to do in the real world. For example, finding information about going on vacation. Right? So that's an example of finding specific information like opening times, travel times, prices, rules and regulations. This is all important information. So, authentic language versus language learner created text. So, try to have a balance of the two. It's good to have authentic language in the classroom because that prepares students better for the real world. Okay, let's continue. So the difference between skimming and scanning. So skimming is when you read an article quickly and you're just trying to get the gist of it. You're not reading it very carefully. You're just trying to catch the main ideas, the overall theme, what is the structure of the text and the genre. Is it something lighthearted, like a satire? Is it something more serious? And what is the main idea? If it's scanning, like a scanner, you keep going until you find that specific information that you need. You might be looking for a name or a year in the text. And as soon as you find it, you stop reading. That's all you need, just that specific piece of information. So next, what I'd like you to do is to kind of come up with some activities that you think will benefit students. And also, I would like you to think, is it more skimming or scanning based activity? For example, if you go to a restaurant and you open up a menu and you're looking for items of beef that have beef in it, would that be skimming or scanning? If you said scanning, that would be correct because the keyword you're looking for beef, and as soon as you find that, you look to see what's available. How about if you're reading an article about uh, stars and astronomy, and you're trying to see what this article is about? Where are they going with this? And you're trying to get a feel for the article. You're trying to get the main idea. That would be skimming. Okay, good. Does anyone have an example that you want to put in the chat? Let me know. Yes, it is skimming. Good. And while you're coming up with an idea, I also want to tell you that you want to have a balance of the two. You want to have both scanning and skimming questions. And because it's easier to come up with questions for scanning, most teachers tend to come up with a lot of scanning questions and not enough skimming. So try to have a balance of 50-50 of both. Okay, for transit times, if you're looking to see when the train leaves, that would actually be scanning because you're looking for one specific time when the train leaves or when it arrives. So that would be scanning, but it's a good idea. Horoscope, yeah, would be trying to see if you're gonna have a good day or a bad day, then it's skimming. Yes, okay, well done. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those ideas in the chat. Let's move on. So here are some appropriate tasks. Oh, there are more ideas, like a magazine article. Yes, yeah, to try to discover what it's all about. It is skimming. Yeah, thank you, Lori. So here are some tasks that would be appropriate, like reordering paragraphs. So you give the paragraphs mixed up, and then the students have to put them in order using skimming, right? They'll try to get the, oh, this is the introduction. I think this is the conclusion. Now let's try to find the body paragraphs, in which order you would put them in. And finding words to match the definitions. That's a very, very common exercise that I see. So here's a list of the new words, and these are the explanations. Now let's match them. Thinking of a title or headline for a text. If it has no title, it's great. But even if it has a title, you can still ask the students to come up with another title or subheadings. They often don't have subheadings for the paragraphs. You can also ask them to do that. Reinsert missing words and sentences. It's called the cloze exercise with a Z, or in the US it's a Z, CLOZE. And that's great. You can ask the students to fill in the missing words. And you can provide the words to choose from if you want to make it easier. If you want to make it harder, don't provide the words. They have to go back to the text and find it. So that's how you make it harder. Discuss interpretations, meanings, feelings. That's response to the text. Yeah. So that's again higher level question. And then jigsaw reading, you can also do jigsaw reading. And what that is you put the students into groups, and each group only reads one paragraph. And then when we come back to the class, they put this together. So the first group talks about the first paragraph, the second group about the second paragraph, etc. And at the end, we put it together in the class. And of course, you can let the other students read the rest of the story if they want. But that way you can cover a lot of information in a short time. So that's also effective. And then it's not just speaking. Pardon me, it's not just reading. Oh, I gave it away. It's not just reading. It's what else? It's also a speaking activity and listening, because they have to listen to each other to discuss it, right? So it's good to get other skills involved as well. And then let's talk about top-down and bottom-up processing. So it's the different ways to handle text. Bottom up is if you build understanding of a text from the small pieces. Top down, if you use what you already know about the text, you kind of predict the content and the structure, so you get a basic impression of a text. So there's, again, should be a mixture of the two. Sometimes you use this, sometimes you use the other. And for example, if you read the title of a piece of writing or an article, and you ask the students, what might this article be about? Would that be bottom up or top down? If you said top down, you are correct, because it is prediction. How about if you ask the students to read a piece of writing to focus more on form than meaning, like the grammatical features, for example, like focusing on a verb tense? That would be bottom up processing, because they have the small pieces and then they put the big picture together. So here, let me show you a picture, and I'm going to ask you to tell me what you see here. Okay, so here it is. Let me see if I can share my screen. Yeah, there it is. What do you see here? Write it in the chat, please. Okay, yeah. So you you get different responses. Some of you saw a face, some of you saw a mouse or a rat. Yeah. Okay. So if you saw a man in the image, you saw the man's image right away, that would be bottom up processing, right? Yeah, the bald man. Good. But if I told you that I'm going to show you an animal and you saw a rat, then that would be what? That would be top down processing, because then you already have that expectation that it's going to be a man, an animal, pardon me. Yeah, a sleeping rat. Yeah, that's it. Okay, let's continue. And then intensive reading is also good, because this way students really focus in on the details. They get to analyze it. It's often you have questions like that in an academic settings on exams, and they're able to go back and forth between the questions and the text. Extensive reading, on the other hand, it's more like real life, because people read for pleasure. It's faster, it's more fluent. Nobody's going to ask you questions about it. It's just for you to enjoy the reading or catching up on the latest news. It's more enjoyable, and often we can have a book club, and you can ask the students all read the same book, and then you can discuss that. Or if they want to choose their own book, then that would be more challenging, but you can also do that, so you can decide. But definitely encourage students to read outside the classroom, because it will have a really strong impact on their learning, because they get a lot of vocabulary. And the nice thing about it is that they'll be able to connect it to the story, and that will help them remember. It creates that hook in the brain, right? And if they have more vocab, their grammar is getting better. They become more confident and more capable, and definitely they will be able to perform better linguistically. So just encourage them to do a lot of reading outside the classroom. Don't just let them read the textbook. And authentic text, we have a lot of options nowadays, blogs, newspapers, they can read them online, or novels. Short stories are really good. The graded levels are great because that will help them choose a book wisely. Because often it will tell you on the back whether it's British or American English and what level it is. If you see like a 3000, that means it has the 3000 most common words in it. So it will tell you, or it might tell you B2, which is the higher intermediate, C1, lower advanced, A2 is the higher beginners. So that's the European system that you might see. If you're in Canada, you see the CLB, the Canadian Language Benchmarks. So that helps. And then they often have additional information. They might have the vocab, glossary, footnotes, questions at the end. And sometimes it also comes with audio. And you can jump to different stages of the book and just make it an enjoyable process for the students. And then, so we've talked about why we teach reading, the task feedback cycle, what are appropriate tasks like skimming and scanning, and starting with the simpler and going to the more challenging tasks. And then we talked about top-down and bottom-up processing, and intensive and extensive reading. So at this time, I just want to mention that all of our previous webinars are available on the TEFL Academy YouTube channel. So you're welcome to view them at your leisure. And now I'd like to open up the floor to Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And I'll do my best to answer them for you. And in the meantime, while you're thinking of questions, I would like to show you something. And again, I'm going to ask you what you see here. Just a second. Okay, so what do you see here? Yes, that's the thing. That's the thing. Is it a letter B or is it a letter 13? That's exactly right. So I'm going to show it to you this way to make it even more obvious. Yeah, that's it. So if you said a B, what would that be? Top down or bottom up processing? And if you said 13, what would that be? show it to you like that. Okay. So if you said B, it's bottom up, right? Because we didn't really have much previous information. But if you said 13, then that would be top-down processing, because you would have the 12 and the 14 to help you, right? So you had some other information, and that's why that would be top-down. So that's the difference, right? Bottom-up or top-down processing. Okay. All right, and then let's look at the questions in the meantime. So what do you like? Okay, what do you like best about teaching English? Oh, I just love meeting the different students. I always learn from them so much, and all the different cultures, the way that they interact with each other. There's just so much potential for you to learn from them, right? And then you're helping them improve their lives, right? That's the real reward. When you see them using English, and teacher, I understood what they were saying on the radio. One of my students, the first time he heard QE2 on the radio, he was so proud of himself. He said, Teacher, I knew it's Queen Elizabeth II. They were talking about the highway. And he started using QE2. He was so proud of himself. Yeah, that's very rewarding when you see them applying what they're learning. And then the 5 Ws and how a good exercise for an after reading task. Okay, so the 5 Ws, you mean the who, what, when, where, why? Yeah, those are good to ask. But if you ask those questions, the who, what, when, where, those four, those are just basic scanning questions. Now, if you ask the why, then we get into the skimming, right? And remember, I asked you to have a 50-50 balance. So those are good to ask, but you have to ask more skimming questions. So skimming questions like, why did the author say this? Or what is the intention behind this? Or what do you think the character is going to do next without reading? And then you can read later. But challenge the students more meaningfully. Or if this were to happen today, what would you do in that situation? You can personalize it. So ask higher level questions, right? And that will make it more intellectually challenging for the students, but at the same time more rewarding, right? Because the who, what, when, where, those are fairly easy to answer because they just go to the text, find the answer quickly. But these other questions that are more meaningful, they will certainly enjoy them a lot more. And the close exercise I really like too. And yeah, you can create your own, basically just deleting some of the words, or sometimes it's already done for you. Sometimes I just play. I just play a sentence or two and they have to write it down. That's again more like a pronunciation and listening exercise based on the reading. So you can mix it up, right? Provide a variety of exercises. Is there a link to find graded level books? Yes, there are. There are quite a few websites. Let me show you one. The one I like to use is ESL Gold because they do have a large variety of exercises. I'll show you. Yeah, here it is. So let me share this with you. I'll put it in the chat and then I'll share it with you as well. So here's the link and I'll share it with you. Okay, sorry, I just completely lost it, but I was able to come back. So here it is. Yeah, it's called ESL Gold. And this has, as you can see, other skills, but if I clicked on reading, and then here it is, books and products. And then notice it's listed according to level. So you got low beginning, high beginning, low, high, intermediate, all the way to advanced. And then you can check out the activities like low, intermediate. Oh no, that's not what I wanna. Yeah, but you can check out the different levels. Okay, I'll stop sharing. And there's another question. How do we deal with students with dyslexia? Well, that's a good question. If you have students with learning disabilities, you will actually learn about that when you do more teacher. My apologies. I think the page was trying to load and then I lost you guys, but I'm back. So yeah, we talked about dyslexia. So you need to get special training for that, right? How to help those students. But you definitely want to give them more time. You want to be more patient with them, and you're gonna give them a little bit of extra time if it's an exam situation. They might want to do it separately because they just need more time, right, to process information. They can't help it. It's not it's you can't really speed it up. Right? But yeah, you might want to do special training for that. There are usually PD workshops on that, on how to help with students with learning disabilities. I recommend doing extra training for that because it's definitely helpful. Okay, so somebody said bottom up would be the big picture and top down is focusing on detail. That's right. Would that also be a way of understanding the concept? Yeah, yeah, certainly. And if you hear something for the first time, right, then it's you just kind of have to figure it out. But if you've already heard about climate change and global warming, when you talk about it, oh yeah, yeah, I've got some background information, and then you can just fit that in there. So that certainly helps having some background information. Okay, here's another question. If some students' level is B2 and some are B1 level, how to teach them are unfamiliar in the same text? That's actually good. This is actually what you want. You want a B1 level student and you want them to have some B2 words. Because if the student is B1 and everything is B1 level, they're not learning anything, right? Excuse me. So you want to have some B2 levels in there. And Vocab Kitchen? I'm afraid to share it now because I don't want it to go away. But Vocab Kitchen is a great site because it will tell you what level the word is. So I'll put it in the chat for you. And it will tell you. And you want to have a few of the words higher level because then they will be able to learn that. And then I'll show you how to tell if it's a good level. Just grab a random book. Grab any random books and take a book, open it up to a random page, and then put your hand there, right? So that part of the text is visible. Okay, so cover up most of it, but see part of the text visible. And look at this little text at the beginning and tell me how many new words you have in this new text, in this first paragraph. I just have a short paragraph. How many new words do you have in that book? Now, if you said 0, that means you're not learning anything from that book. So that's not a good book for you to read to learn new words. If you said between 1, 2, 3 words, new words, that's good because you're learning new words from it. If it's 4, 5 or more, then that's not a good book for you, for your student to read because it's too many new words. They would not be able to decipher the meaning, right? But that's a good way to check whether this is a good level for you or not, other than using Vocab Kitchen. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. I will also show you another website. It's called Free Speed Reading. And it's really helpful because you can just select the theme, like fun facts. You can select the level. This has also got different levels up to 13. And you can select the story. And as soon as students click begin, the timer starts. And they just have to read this. So go ahead and read it. Okay, so when you're done, click on done reading. And now come the comprehension question. There are always 4. So we use wool to make, let's see, yarn. Wool keeps us, let's see, warm. Lanolin is I think it's a grease, but let's just put oil just to see what happens. And we'll close can. We know they can shrink. Okay. See, so it gives you right away the feedback that we got 3 correct. And here, we made a mistake. So then it turns red and then it gives us the correct answer. And it got 75% comprehension. And when you click on view results, it's really great because it tells us the words per minute, right? 195. And we got 75% comprehension. And our goal is to get between 200 to 300 words per minute. If you want college level, then it's 350 to 450. If you are at 575, you're like a CEO. And 4700 is like a word champion. But even notice the word champion only had 67% comprehension. So that's what I mean. It doesn't have to be 100%. But this is great because students can measure the number of their speed. So it gives them a number, right? So I usually do this like at the beginning of the class, and then you can go to higher levels. Level 1 has 3 stories, but let's just try a level 6. And then you see the story gets a little bit more complex. This one about how the M&M started. And again, there would be again just the 4 comprehension questions, and then you would see the results there. Ooh, really fast speed, but 0% comprehension. So that's another one that goes by levels. All right. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. So again, similar question, students with a reading problem. And sometimes they just need a lot of encouragement, right? You just want to encourage them, reassure them, provide them with something easier to begin with to build up their confidence, and then make it progressively harder for them. They really can improve a lot that way. Yeah, but they need reassurance just like the rest of the students that they can do it. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? As a new TEFL teacher, will teaching reading be a possible first lesson? Yeah, you can always use reading. Yeah, reading is great. Just remember to introduce it instead of here's an article we're going to read today. Find a way to introduce it and then provide tasks for them, right? That are appropriate before and after reading. Start with the easier ones and then the harder ones later. And then find a way for them to use that information. Like I told you, use the words from the story or tell it in your own words. Or did you have something similar happen? So personalize it for them. All right. So basically, that's all the time we had for today. And now at the end, I would like you to complete a short survey, which will just take a few minutes of your time. And here's well, first of all, thank you for attending. We hope you found it beneficial. And I also put the link in the chat, the SurveyMonkey link, if you could just take a few minutes to complete that. And once again, thank you so much for being here, taking time out of your busy schedule. We know you all got a busy weekend ahead of you. And thank you for being here with us. We certainly appreciate that. And we hope to see you next time. And wish you all the best in your teaching career. Happy teaching. Yes, you're most welcome. Yeah, for each week, we complete the survey each week. So if you've already completed one, you can still do this one because this is about just this webinar of today. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're glad you could join us, guys. That's great. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for being here once again. Take care. See you next time. Bye, guys.